The safety is off. There's a round in the chamber. This is Armed Alabama. Sponsored by McCoy Outdoor Company, Mobile's hometown full-line outdoor sporting products and gear store. An interactive talk show discussing self-defense, product reviews, shooting tips, safety, and more. Your calls, comments, and texts welcome at 343-0106. Now, here are your hosts, retired judge and certified NRA instructor Rusty Johnston and certified NRA law enforcement instructor Adam Strange.
I know what you're thinking. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? Well, to tell you the truth, in all this excitement, I've kind of lost track myself. But being this is a 44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and would blow your head clean off, you've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
Good evening. This is Matt Green. I'm filling in for Adam Strange, and Judge Rusty Johnston will be joining us tonight. He'll connect up by telephone in a few minutes. Tonight we're going to talk about pistols, revolvers, rifles, shotguns, ammunition, concealed carry, personal defense training, and attacks on our God-given right, our natural right to protect ourselves and our families. Tonight we're also going to delve into a little bit about the Vernon Madison, who's been on death row for almost 31 years for assassinating a Mobile police officer, Corporal Julius Schulte. We'll talk in general about why it takes often decades for killers to be put to death with someone who's actually tried a lot of capital murder cases in Judge Johnston. We'll also have our firearms expert, Rusty Johnston, joining us to take calls and texts on any firearm-related topics tonight here at the FM Talk 106.5 studio. You can call in at 251-343-0106, or you can also text us at that number as well. I'm also joined in studio by Sydney Johnston. Sydney, tell us a little bit about our social media and how folks can contact us.
Thanks, Matt. We have a bunch of social media. We've got our Twitter. It's at Armed Alabama. We have a Facebook page. That's Armed Alabama Radio, FM 106.5. A YouTube page, which the judge puts a lot of great clips from the show and also different shooting instructions. We have our website, armedalabama.com. And also, I think we talked last week about the gun-free zones. We still have our email up, reports@armedalabama.com, if you have any pictures of gun-free zones that you think are illegal.
You mean like the Starbucks parking lot near Bel Air Mall, for
There
instance?
you go.
Okay.
Yep.
Judge Johnston, good evening.
Good evening. Good intro. The original script said natural rights because I was going to change it for you. And I wasn't sure, people aren't used to that term. So I've had it as God-given rights. And, folks, the reason I've done that is, back in the day when they wrote the Constitution or drafted the Constitution, the theory was natural rights. And that was interchangeable, really, with God-given rights, because the idea was when you were born, that because of being born, you had certain rights by virtue of being a citizen or a person born in this society. And the right to defend yourself, I think it's the top right, according to Blackstone, that wasn't given to you by anybody. And it's called natural rights. And that's why the Second Amendment doesn't give anything. It merely protects us from the federal government, not the state and local. Now, they've done their voodoo and misread the Constitution, but any of you that are interested, Google, we've actually got it posted, Sydney, I'm not sure. We've got the Bill of Rights with the preamble, and the preamble makes it clear they were never intended to be applied to the states. But that's another issue. Matt, you've done a lot of work on Vernon Madison, and I want to let you tell us, because I think people need to be reminded about him, or especially what he did. And here we are, third decade after he killed Officer Schulte, murdered him in cold blood, and he just got to stay. And folks, and that's the reason this is kind of newsworthy right now. But people tend to forget these things. This happened. The actual murder happened in
1985.
Wow.
85. And I was a young lawyer at the time, and I just cannot believe that it's taken this long.
It's incredible. He's just had a charmed appeals process. He's appealed his case for so long, and he's been tied up in exercising his constitutional rights to the point where he has created his own new constitutional issue of mental incompetency. Traditionally, you think of, the state can't execute someone who was incompetent at the time they committed the offense or possibly at the time that they come to trial. But no. His incompetency, according to his attorneys, has occurred subsequent to his conviction and sentencing. And they are trying now to convince the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals that it would be cruel and unusual to execute Mr. Vernon Madison in his current state. It's really quite remarkable if you consider the track he's been on. He had three jury trials. He was convicted in all three cases. His first case was in 1985. The jury recommended the death penalty. The judge gave him the death penalty. The state courts set aside that, reversed the conviction, alleging that there was the prosecution had improperly struck African American jurors. So he went back and was tried again. Same result. In 1990, they found him guilty, recommended death. Again, the courts reversed that conviction based on the fact that the state's medical expert had relied upon facts not admitted into evidence. So he gets a third trial. This time, the jury does find him guilty, but the jury on a 7-5 vote recommends life without. The trial judge, who was the trial judge in all three cases, Judge Farrell McRae, did a judicial override and imposed the death penalty. The state courts agreed to hear the appeal again. However, they affirmed the appeal. Then he went to the federal court system, where he argued that he was denied his right to a fair cross-section of the community, and he raised Batson issues again. And ultimately, he was rejected in that. And in fact, they tried to raise the issue of judicial override as being unconstitutional. The 11th Circuit flatly rejected it. But the 11th Circuit did give him a full hearing on another Batson issue that he raised at the third trial. That was rejected as well after a thoughtful opinion by the trial judge, Christy Dubose, the lower court judge, Christy Dubose. And the execution was set, and then the 11th Circuit now has stepped in and said that he is now suffering from he has created a tribal issue about whether he is competent to be executed, whether he is cognizant of the charges against him. And so now the state of Alabama and the Schulte family, his wife, by the way, is now deceased. She has passed since this now. But it's just an incredible saga. The 11th Circuit set to hear arguments on it later this month.
Number one, I know a lot of people say, well, he's been on death row. That is a horrible fate. It was reported several times back to me that somebody I have on death row has made the statement, he's never lived so well before. He has a nicer place than he's ever lived before, that he has, anything that he wants to read, et cetera, because they've got their own place there. And so, you or I, anybody listening wouldn't last a week. We'd go crazy on death row. But, this is a different type of person. And, of course, what this gets us to what we've discussed in the legal community is one of the reasons it takes so long is Congress has given the federal courts, through what we call habeas corpus on death penalty cases, jurisdiction to hear those cases. They have created a cause of action that the federal courts can hear to hear cases that the state courts always took care of, and there was never any appeal to the federal court system. And I mean, it's not an appeal, but it's a side collateral attack. And that's really what causes these cases. Well, the state of Alabama caused them to last a good bit of time, but that's why it's taking so much time now.
Hey, we're about to go to our break, Judge.
And Congress could stop all that tomorrow.
Absolutely.
By a simple vote.
Call us at 251-343-0106 and offer some, if you know anything about the officer, we'd like to hear from you.
Looking for land, commercial space, or a home to purchase? Or do you have real estate that you would like to sell? Then you need to talk with Mamoon Siddiq at REMAX Partners 7221 Grelot Road, Suite B. Mamoon is dedicated to providing his clients trustworthy real estate expertise and professional, dependable service. Whether buying or selling your primary residence or a second home, or relocating to a new neighborhood, Mamoon can help make your home ownership dreams come true. Email Mamoon at remax.net. That's MAMUN at remax.net. If your spine is in a bind, it's time to be aligned. For 20 years, Dr. Justin Foster has been diagnosing and taking care of spinal problems. Misaligned vertebrae can hurt due to a strain or sprain from an accident, or be injured by repeated use and can lead to a pinched nerve if not fixed. Pinched nerves can cause a series of discomforts, including decreased flexibility, headaches, muscle, joint, disc, and nerve pain. Foster Chiropractic of Tillman's Corner, easy to find across from Lowe's off Rangeline. When buying a vehicle, don't waste your valuable time. David Parnell at Palmer's Toyota is committed to getting you the best deal on a new, used, or leased car. And David will do that without wasting your time. Don't play the back and forth game. See David Parnell today. Palmer's Toyota, 470 Schillinger Road South. That's David Parnell at Palmer's Toyota, 639-0800, extension 168. Don't forget to see David Parnell at Palmer's Toyota, Schillinger Road, just south of Airport. He won't waste your time.
Step up to the firing line. Armed Alabama is back. Questions, comments, and texts at 343-0106.
The 45 long slide with laser sighting.
It's a brand new. We just got them in. That's a good gun. Just touch the trigger, the beam comes on, and you put the red dot where you want the bullet to go. You can't miss. Anything else?
Phased plasma rifle in the 40-watt range.
Hey, just what you see, pal.
The Uzi 9mm.
You know your weapons, buddy. Any one of these is ideal for home defense. So, what shall it be?
All.
Let me close early today. There's a 15-day wait on the handguns. The rifles you can take right now. You can't do that.
Wrong.
Welcome back to Armed Alabama. Give us a call, 251-343-0106. I'm speaking with Judge Rusty Johnson. We're talking about Vernon Madison, the 31-year death row inmate who has seemed to escaped justice in the execution-style murder of Corporal Julius Schulte, Mobile police officer in 1985. Judge, I was reading the trial judge in this case. He had a hearing recently on the mental competency of Vernon Madison. It's Judge Smith. As you know, Judge Smith is certainly one of our better justices and judges here in Mobile County, and he gave a full and fair hearing to the issues that Mr. Madison was asserting. His issues really that he's asserting now are not really fit within the constitutional parameters of incompetency in terms of what the Supreme Court has said merits an execution to be stayed. You know, generally they require the defendant to be insane or not understand the nature or the reason for his execution. What his attorneys, Madison's attorneys, are arguing are not that really. And what they're saying is he's had a series of strokes, he suffers vascular dementia, diabetes, hypertension, memory impairment. But all that was flatly rejected at a hearing Judge Smith held. He heard experts from both sides of the case. And, I read his opinion, and there was a piece of it that really struck me as just incredible. They were referring to his recent strokes, and Judge Smith quoted in his opinion that when they brought Madison in for an evaluation at Mobile Infirmary in January of this year, neurology was consulted and an MRI was obtained showing a very small acute CVA. This, however, does not account for his symptoms. Synthetic marijuana and methamphetamine use, however, is more clinically consistent with his symptoms, especially with a quick resolution. Now, if he's been on death
So
row
on
for
death
31
row,
years,
you're using meth and spice. I mean, basically, isn't that incredible?
it is.
So it's self-induced, and why hasn't somebody found out how people on death row are getting a hold of meth and spice?
Let's go ahead and take one of our calls, Judge. Dennis?
Yeah.
Good evening, Dennis. How are you this evening?
Great. How are you doing this evening, Dennis?
Great. Hey, I've got a training question for you. Like a lot of gun owners, I have about 5 different semi-automatic pistols, and I guess I'd like your opinion on what's the best way to train, or should I narrow it down to maybe 2, and train with those all the time for a self-defense kind of situation?
Judge Rusty, you want to take that?
Yeah, I will. Repeat it to me. I couldn't quite hear his question.
He's got. He wants to know. He's got a couple guns. What's the best way to train? Should he train with all of them, or?
His carry gun, I would try to stick to the same gun every time, because I had 2 guns that I was alternating with. One had a decocker and one had a decocker safety, and the difference being the decocker pops back up when you after you decock, it pops back up. The decocker safety stays down. Well, the problem would be then if you need it, you're going to draw the handgun and try to fire it, and that safety's going to be down. And believe me, it gets you just too confused. It needs to be so instinctual that you're just going to use it. So I would try to stick to the same gun every time if you can. And you need to practice. You can do this at home with, make sure that it's empty. You put snap caps in it. And even when it's empty, be pointing it somewhere where even if it weren't empty, it wouldn't hurt anybody. But you need to practice drawing that weapon. And because that's the problem. Nobody ever practices it. You may be a great shot on the shooting range, but, can you get it out of your holster and fire at somebody that's attacking you in 2 or 3 seconds? And if you can, if it's going to take you 15 seconds to get it out and get a shot off, then you're probably dead.
All right,
or
thank you.
Or assaulted or kidnapped or whatever it's going to be.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Dennis. Let's move on to our next call. John?
Yes.
Go ahead, John.
Yes, I want to advertise on y'all show. I got a booth at the Mobile Flea Market. I sell gun holsters, all types. I got shotgun cases, rifle cases coming in. I got AR cases, and I got a new holster coming in. One holster will fit 150 handguns.
Whoa.
They'll be coming in about 2 months, I hope.
Tell us where your booth is and what time you get there on Friday.
I'm there on Saturday and Sunday at the Mobile Flea Market. I'm on A167. I'm usually completely set up with my high doors up by 10 o'clock. I'm there from 10 to 5. And on Sundays, the same way.
This isn't stuff from China, is it?
No. Some of my hoses are made the one that is 150, that fits 150, one holster fits 150 guns. It's made in USA, and they're proud of it.
For some of our college-age listeners, is this a climate-controlled facility that you're in?
No.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
outside. I'm outside under the cover.
All right, old school. Okay.
Thank you.
We'll try to send some people out your way, John.
Hosters,
Thank you.
Uncle Mike. I got Allen hosters, and I got another brand hosters.
All right. Thank you so much, John. Judge Rusty, I was going to talk to you. You've tried lots of capital cases here in Mobile County. The Supreme Court seems to be
a number of them. Yeah.
The Supreme Court seems to think that. In Florida recently, their capital law was struck down as unconstitutional, and recently the court is maybe looking at another Alabama case. What are your thoughts on the court's involvement in overturning a jury's recommendation of life without parole?
Well, I think it's ridiculous because they have on another track completely separate. Well, first of all, some states still the jury sentence defendants in ordinary felony cases, and we went to judges doing that. The idea being, well, judges see all kind of cases; they need to put them in perspective, and jurors don't. But in the famous case of the Gore versus BMW, the punitive damages and all, there have been just tons of law review articles, academic papers that maybe we need judges to be the ones who impose punitive damages because they've got the knowledge, the wisdom, et cetera, to do that, rather than jurors who are going to be more emotional. Well, can you have it both ways? You want judges doing it in punitive damages cases, but you don't want them to have the option to do it in death penalty cases? That's really unbelievable. And it's not the option. Ours is the judge is just basically he's getting a recommendation from the jury.
Yeah.
And he puts whatever weight in there that he considers it worth. And that's the difference really between us and Florida. And, I may get my dates mixed up. I think it was 2 years ago this past December, the Supreme Court denied cert to hear an Alabama death case alleging the same issue. I mean, in effect, they affirmed our override. But I guess, we've got one up there now because Scalia's died, whose death has to be the only one of a high official that was not investigated when he died under really strange circumstances.
That was really strange.
That's just incredible. Absolutely incredible.
There's rumors that there was rituals going on.
The person who was assassinated in Texas was Kennedy, and we're still talking about that. So I guess that's not unusual.
Well, part of this problem is the law seems to be changing. In the recent case, the Hearst case in Florida, which struck down their capital sentencing, it had set aside 2 Supreme Court cases. They reversed themselves and they somewhat abandoned their adherence to precedent, and they've adopted this somewhat amorphous standard of evolving standards of decency, and that's been somewhat a nebulous concept that really is subjectively applied by the justices, and makes it very difficult for a trial court or particularly state courts to give effect to that. And there used to be a lot of deference. 50 years ago, there was a tremendous amount of deference afforded the state authorities, and now it's not that way. It seems like.
And it's like I think it was. I can try to quote the name. One of the justices said, it's a continuing constitutional convention. That's when they're issuing these opinions, and it wasn't supposed to be that way. I think I mentioned to you, folks, when they were campaigning for the ratification of the new Constitution, their names were set backwards. But anyway, the Federalists were really the people pushing the Constitution, but they really weren't Federalists as we know Federalists today. But anyway, read some of the anti-Federalist papers. There was one called Brutus, and he was actually a New York judge. I think it's Brutus 11. He predicted in his Brutus 11 letter exactly what would happen with the federal courts if you had the Constitution approved in the way it was approved. He just laid it out, and he said they will eventually become the strongest branch of government. The Federalist Papers.
All right, Judge, we're going into a break real quick.
Branch of the government.
This is Armed Alabama.
He laid it out properly.
You're walking on the fighting side of me, running down the way of life.
FM Talk 106.5, the Gulf Coast Weather Authority, and Dr. Bill Williams.
We'll look for clear skies tonight. Low temperatures will be in the upper 60s at daybreak. For Wednesday, sunny and hot with afternoon temperatures in the lower 90s. And the outlook for Thursday, sunny and hot again with afternoon readings in the lower 90s. This is meteorologist Dr. Bill Williams for FM Talk 106.5.
FM Talk 1065, the Gulf Coast Weather Authority.
Escambia County, Florida is now under a public health emergency because of the Zika virus. Hello, everyone. I'm Mel Showers, News 5 for FM Talk 1065. There are now 2 confirmed Zika cases in the Florida Panhandle. 1 case is in Escambia County and 1 is in Santa Rosa County. Representatives from the federal government will visit Alabama this week to determine if illegal immigrant children from El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala will be relocated in Baldwin County. Governor Bentley says federal authorities are expected to visit in the next day or 2. No decisions on whether to use the fields have been made. Duck boats are coming to the port city. They will show tourists Mobile by land and sea. Today, the City Council approved the measure to construct a boat ramp at the Convention Center and USS Alabama for the new attraction. I'm Mel Showers, News 5 for FM Talk 1065.
When buying a vehicle, don't waste your valuable time. David Parnell at Palmer's Toyota is committed to getting you the best deal on a new, used, or leased car. And David will do that without wasting your time. Don't play the back and forth game. See David Parnell today. Palmer's Toyota, 470 Schillinger Road South. That's David Parnell at Palmer's Toyota, 639-0800, extension 168. Don't forget to see David Parnell at Palmer's Toyota, Schillinger Road, just south of Airport. He won't waste your time. Longleaf pine is the South's original pine tree, towering over all others. Vast clear-cutting logging operations in the first half of the last century destroyed these beautiful longleaf forests, some well over 100 years old. Their wood sent to New England, New York, and Europe. Many Southerners have no memory of the magnificent longleaf forests that covered the South. The America's Longleaf Restoration Initiative is a concerted effort to restore and conserve longleaf pine forests. The best part is, it's working. For more info, visit americaslongleaf.org.
Step up to the firing line. Armed Alabama is back. Questions, comments, and texts at 343-0106.
I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want. If you are looking for ransom, I can tell you I don't have money. But what I do have are a very particular set of skills. Skills I've acquired over a very long career. Skills that make me a nightmare for people like you. If you let my daughter go now, that'll be the end of it. I will not look for you. I will not pursue you. But if you don't, I will look for you. I will find you. And I will kill you.
Welcome back to Armed Alabama. I want to say the last quote we had with Terminator, where he had the phased plasma rifle. Judge, is that true that you can buy that at McCoy Outdoor?
Well, I was just looking on their website, and I believe they're sold out. But you've reminded me that I wanted to talk about, if you don't want to fool with the stolen goods and the pigs and all that at the fair, at the flea market.
Flea market. Yeah.
Go by McCoy Outdoor Company and see they've got every kind of holster you can imagine. I'm partial to strong side retention holsters, but you definitely need to have a holster that you can wear all the time, that you're comfortable with, so you can draw and get your gun out. And they've got, it's clearly the largest selection of holsters in the area, barring the flea market. But knowledgeable people that can fit, because you got to have a good fit. And I recommend, too, after you get the holster, roll around on the ground. It doesn't need to come out because, you may be in some kind of confrontation like that. They've got holsters. Of course, they've got everything else. They've got those Yeti coolers down there that, they're better than a darn refrigerator. But full line selection of concealed carry handguns. If you're into AR-15s and some of your tactical guns or shotguns, McCoy Outdoors is the place to buy them. So McCoy Outdoors at 3498 Spring Hill Avenue, and that's in the old K&B Shopping Center. Or you can go Google them. It's McCoy Outdoor Company, CO.com. Look them up on Facebook and like their page. They're one of our sponsors of this show, the main sponsor, and we really appreciate it. When you go in there, say you heard them on Armed Alabama.
That's right. That's correct. And, if you're going to be rolling around, you certainly probably need to go visit Dr. Justin Foster with Foster Chiropractic on Rangeline Road across from Lowe's.
Yeah, you're going to need
get you stretched out a little bit.
Rolling around. I
Sure,
tell you,
sure.
He especially, those back adjustments, because I have back problems, and they can adjust your back. You got to know what's wrong with it, obviously, but most people that by the time they make it to Dr. Foster, they kind of know what's wrong with their back, and you can just you can go and get that relief you need because it'll drive you crazy.
He's got your back.
But I'm doing real good.
Well, good, good. You and I were talking during the break about this evolution of the meaning of cruel and unusual, and I kind of was reinterpreted during the Warren Court years, but before that, it had been a pretty consistent application. Can you talk a little bit about how the cruel and unusual phrase has evolved?
Yeah, and like you say, it really didn't evolve until Chief Justice Earl Warren, which is the biggest mistake actually, President Eisenhower said it's the biggest mistake he ever made in his life, was appointed to the Supreme Court, and a few other liberals, and just totally changed the country. But one of the things that happened is they discussed what that meant, the framers did, and at the constitutional ratifying conventions in the states, and they wanted to make sure that you didn't have this arbitrary, really vicious justice that they had in England, where they had something like 200 capital offenses. Some of the stealings, thefts were capital offenses, and where they hang, drawn, and quartered people, all that kind of stuff. Tortured, slow tortures. They said they wanted to make sure of those, but there were many people that needed floggings, brandings. Those
ear
were
cropping
common at the time the
pillorying.
Constitution was enacted, and they never saw a problem with those. And we're not talking about doing anything like that. We're talking about these people, these fanatics. They think that using this drug cocktail to put you to sleep is cruel and unusual. I'd rather have that than die of a stroke slowly, or Lou Gehrig's disease, or be eaten up with some terrible cancer. Gosh, I mean, that's just incredible.
Or you could compare it to poor Corporal Schulte, who was shot twice in the back of the head and fought for 6 days until passing.
Yeah.
That seems to be somewhat
Right.
of a cruel and unusual way to go.
Right, exactly. And so that's one of the reasons we have this show. We want to make sure that people are protecting themselves. And in the next couple of weeks, we need to do a home hardening show about, folks, it's amazing how many people have their houses broken into by burglars, that the burglars just come in through an unlocked door or window. It's probably about 50% of the burglaries, if I'm remembering correctly. They will just come in through an unlocked door or window. And burglary doesn't necessarily mean stealing goods inside. Burglary can mean they broke inside to commit a rape or to commit an assault or a murder. And those things happen. So just number one, before you even think about an alarm or a camera or whatever, lock your doors and windows.
Judge, recently, Washington Post has been reporting, and some of the other media outlets have been reporting on what they call the muted response to the federal government seeking the death penalty for Dylan Roof. As you remember, Dylan Roof was that young white supremacist charged in the massacre of 9 black men and women as they prayed in a South Carolina church a year ago. And, the traditional anti-death penalty advocates have not been as outspoken in opposition to the federal government's decision to seek the death penalty. On May 24th, actually, Attorney General Loretta Lynch announced that they would indeed seek the execution for him. Do you think the left has been a little hypocritical?
They are, just like they're hypocritical that, let's say, that Trump caused the violence, not only in California, everywhere he's been, because of his views. They don't say that, I hope, anymore about, this lady deserved to be raped because of the way she was dressing. Yeah, they're totally hypocritical. If that guy, listen, he deserves to be sent to death row under South Carolina law, under their murder statute. I'm sure this fits, so multiple murder, etc., but not under, I assume this is their hate crime bill, which, I mean, if any bill ought to be unconstitutional, it's that nonsense. What's the difference between me killing people because of their race or their sex? Let's say I decide to kill my preacher because I just don't like him. Mm-hmm. But I decide to kill him because of the religion he's preaching. He's still dead. And it was still motivated by either my hatred of him personally or my hatred of him because he was a member of a certain religion. I mean, it's still hateful.
Yeah, and
it's incredible.
Oftentimes the narrative that the anti-death penalty people push, or they focus on the disparate impact of black killers of whites, and also the actual innocence of the person, the risk of condemning an innocent person. The Dylann Roof case doesn't fit into either narrative, which is somewhat, it's leaves you kind of scratching your head about an even and fair application of the law.
That's where prosecutorial discretion is frightening sometimes, because they can pick and choose, who they decide to target. And that's why the federal government needs to be put back in its place, and that's why we need Congress to do something. We either need selective legislation or constitutional amendments to put them back where they were in, before, let's say 1789, because this is not the country or the former government that the founders envisioned, and it's too expensive and too authoritarian, and it's being set up to even get worse.
Do you think it's when called upon to apply these evolving standards of decency that mark the progress of a maturing society, which is kind of the standard now that the court uses, do you think that should be something that the people's elected representatives should define, or do you think that was it better within the purview of 9 unelected life appointees to an appellate court?
Who went to 2 different law schools. They all currently either went to Harvard or Yale. Now, the people's representatives certainly should be the ones deciding what is the evolving standard of decency. And that's what they've done. And, remember, the Constitution never granted the Supreme Court the right to strike down any law at all. John Marshall dreamed that up, and we've now got not only judicial review, which that's called, we've got judicial supremacy, that the Supreme Court has now dubbed itself, since 1958, the sole and ultimate arbiter of all things constitutional. They claimed they were quoting Marbury versus Madison. They weren't. They were quoting Joseph Story.
That's right. And part of it has to do the same line of constitutional construction of those proponents who believe in a living constitution. Can you expound upon that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, a problem is anything has to be interpreted generally. I mean, you can never write a document so tight that it can't, it occasionally is going to have to be interpreted. But theirs has gone so far afield that it borders on the ridiculous. The first amendment to the Constitution, the first one after the Bill of Rights, was in response to the Supreme Court allowing a suit against a state. And they immediately passed an amendment to stop that, because the framers, they said, no, that wasn't the intent. And they immediately passed the amendment that won't allow a person to sue a state. And so, they corrected that problem immediately. And that's the problem. When the Supreme Court's gotten out of line, there hadn't been a correction of it. At least recently there hadn't. And this is accelerated since the New Deal.
Talking here with Mobile County retired Circuit Judge Rusty Johnston, in studio with Sidney Johnston, talking tonight on the Eighth Amendment and Vernon Madison's skate through the criminal justice system, and after 31 years on death row, he's got yet another court hearing later this month, scheduled to be in Atlanta before the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, before a 3-judge panel, 2 of which are Clinton appointees, 1 of which is an Obama appointee, so we'll be anxiously watching to see what happens there. We'll be back with you in just a moment on Armed Alabama.
Longleaf pine is the South's original pine tree, towering over all others. Vast clear-cutting logging operations in the first half of the last century destroyed these beautiful longleaf forests, some well over 100 years old. Their wood sent to New England, New York, and Europe. Many Southerners have no memory of the magnificent longleaf forests that covered the South. The America's Longleaf Restoration Initiative is a concerted effort to restore and conserve longleaf pine forests. The best part is, it's working. For more info, visit americaslongleaf.org. Looking for land, commercial space, or a home to purchase? Or do you have real estate that you would like to sell? Then you need to talk with Mamoon Siddiq at REMAX Partners 7221 Grelot Road, Suite B. Mamoon is dedicated to providing his clients trustworthy real estate expertise and professional, dependable service. Whether buying or selling your primary residence or a second home, or relocating to a new neighborhood, Mamoon can help make your home ownership dreams come true. Email Mamoon at remax.net. That's MAMUN at remax.net. If your spine is in a bind, it's time to be aligned. For 20 years, Dr. Justin Foster has been diagnosing and taking care of spinal problems. Misaligned vertebrae can hurt due to a strain or sprain from an accident, or be injured by repeated use and can lead to a pinched nerve if not fixed. Pinched nerves can cause a series of discomforts, including decreased flexibility, headaches, muscle, joint, disc, and nerve pain. Foster Chiropractic of Tillman's Corner, easy to find across from Lowe's off Rangeline.
Step up to the firing line. Armed Alabama is back. Questions, comments, and texts at 343-0106.
I like you, Philip. But be assured, bite my hand, and I will put you down. Your division is in charge of native crime. Or would you rather I was in charge of native crime? I don't think you'd like my methods.
Welcome back to Armed Alabama. You can give us a call at 343-0106, or you can text us. If you've missed any of our shows in the past few months, you can go to our website, armedalabama.com. We have a download link of all the shows. Also, it's on iTunes, Stitcher, so if you have your iPhone or Android, you can keep updated with us.
Judge, just after talking to Dennis, thinking maybe on the way out on the flea market this weekend, we can stop off at David Parnell and see David Parnell at Palmer's Toyota on Schillingers Road South. That's on the way out there.
That's right. That's exactly right. Because we know some other car dealers that have no gun signs on their door, so we wouldn't want to go in there. It might be unsafe. Yeah, he's I don't like that stress of buying a new car, and he makes it just much less stressful. If anybody wants to call in or text, get them in quick on any gun issue, or if you want to talk about the death penalty, now's your chance. Even if you're against it, we'll talk to you about that. I personally think this idea of having I think we need public death penalties. I wouldn't go, you wouldn't go, but the people who would go and watch it would be the ones who need to go and watch it. Maybe if it deterred one person out of a crowd of, let's say, 1,000, 1,500, boy, wouldn't that be worth it? The idea that it's done in secret 30 years later, like Thomas Wisenhant took 35 years, and that's due to the Southern Poverty Law Center. He was their patron saint. And by the way, John Carroll, who is prosecuting the Chief Justice, was his lawyer on the first trial.
Couldn't we turn it into a game show, Judge?
Going with him for 35 years, committed a series of at least 3 murders I know of, mutilations after their death. It was, I don't want to go over the details, but horrible. And, he got more reprieves, stays, new trials than anybody deserves. And
during the break, you and I were talking about, where we think this Vernon Madison case may go from here. when the 11th Circuit issued its opinion staying the execution, I mean, it was they have, in essence, legally said that they have found that Madison has a substantial likelihood of success on the merits, which is really quite an affront to the state court. And I think the Attorney General's briefed on their appeal to the Supreme Court later that evening mentioned it. But it was quite incredible. That night, there was an emergency appeal by the state of Alabama to the United States Supreme Court. This was about a month ago. And it literally, as Vernon Madison was on death row, everybody's getting ready for the execution, and they're waiting on the Supreme Court. About 8 o'clock, 8:30, late in the evening, they issue a 4-4 vote, which is a tie, which means in the event of a tie, the lower court ruling stands. Right. And this was without Justice Scalia. This is right after his passing. And many have said
the
that
state of Alabama would have won.
Well, if Scalia would have been alive, Vernon Madison would not have been. We have one more call. Right. Let's check out Fred and Sims.
Yes, good afternoon. I suffered through a couple of murder trials. One about 11 years ago, a guy named Thomas Lane, and the judge found him, the jury found him guilty. The judge sentenced him to death, which I was very thankful. And then he had an appeal and another trial. And today, the other judge, I think it was the most honorable Judge Grady, sentenced him also to death row again today. I just wanted to take a second and thank Judge Rusty, even today, even though it's like 11 or 12 years after, that I appreciate him, remember it, and I'm grateful. And sometimes people do remember the good things that judges do, because I really lost.
Well, I thank you.
Was that one you tried, Judge?
Yeah.
Okay. You were the trial
I tried it the first time.
Okay.
And its reasons for reversal was, just nonsense. But that's the normal course of these things. They seem to it takes 2 or 3 trials before they'll let them to proceed up through and to get into all the appeals processes.
Hey, Fred, are you still there?
I'm still on.
Well, can you, I've prosecuted these cases, and it's hard to articulate to someone who's never been to one of these things, but can you just tell us briefly how gut-wrenching it is for a family member or a friend in these cases to sit through a trial like this?
Well, you got the you want to tell the truth, and you're sworn on there, and that's when you get sworn in, doggone it, you better tell the truth. And it's just really a nerve-wracking thing to remember all this stuff, do it accurately, faithfully, and then you just never know what's going to happen. You can't read a jury. It's like playing a craps game. You don't know what's going to happen most of the time. In my opinion, I'm just a humble
Sure.
guy.
Do you think that Mr. Slay was afforded due process and given a fair trial?
Lane. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Lane. Lane.
Oh, yes, sir. Absolutely. Both times. I think everybody jumped through hoops to give him every opportunity in the world to show his case.
Did he have an attorney that was appointed by the court to represent him?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about all that. I know he had a pretty commonly known name lawyer up there. But I don't want to get into all that.
Sure.
I'm not prepared to.
No, I was just asking.
The big thing I want to do is say thank you, Judge. That was the purpose of my call.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
It's difficult for someone who's never been in one of these cases to really describe it. You see stuff on TV, but it doesn't really do it justice. And I know it certainly weighs heavily, not only in the victim's family, but on judges. Judge Johnston, can you tell us kind of some of the cases, the emotions that you go through when you literally have to hold an accused's life in your hands?
Well, one thing, it starts off so tedious that I've always allowed individual voir dire of the jury, individual questioning of the jury. And so that will take, and I didn't want the jurors to sit down there for a week while people were questioned individually. So I would say, if you're juror number 20 through 30, come back tomorrow, try to space them out over the days so they wouldn't have to sit around all that time. So that's just terrible. And frankly, and I rarely would do this, but there were a couple times we went to 9:30 at night. Always had the court police there to take them to their car, but trying to get this thing done in some kind of reasonable time. And then, you get into the evidence, and then the jury, I never told a jury that what they were giving me as a recommendation. I wanted them to know that it was real, because have the heavy weight, on them. And then we would have the sentencing hearing, and I would always recess the sentencing hearing or adjourn it, because instead of doing it right then, because if you do it right then, it looks like you've already made your mind up. And then I'd reset it for a month out or whatever, and then I would write the order and decide during that time. And, you have to write a pretty in-depth order. I suspect there's some judges that get one side or the other to do it for them, but I never believed in doing that. So I would write the order during that month-long break or whatever, try to get all that done properly, and then reconvene it, and then ask again, did he have anything to say before the sentence was imposed, and then read 20-page order, and then that was it. Yeah, it's pretty... It's the closest thing you'll ever get to some, 19th century novel that you would be in. It's just really strange. Now, it would be more profound if you knew that he was going to be executed next week.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be dead before anybody I've sentenced to death dies.
And I know some of these, images and videos and pictures and testimony are pretty visceral, and they tend to resonate through the corridors of time. I know you and I have talked about this. It's been very difficult to get past a lot of these cases. They always kind of stick with you.
Right. All right.
All right, Judge. There was a few. There was a sponsor I don't think we mentioned was Mamoon Siddiq with Remax Realty.
For all your real estate needs, see Mamoon Siddiq at Remax Partners.
And make sure everybody visits our website, armedalabama.com. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. YouTube's got a lot of great links. Also, our podcast.
And remember to like our page.
Yeah, like our page. And tune in next week for Armed Alabama.
Good night.
Good night. We'll see you then.
We don't take our trips on LSD. We don't burn our trap cards down on Main Street. 'Cause we like living right and being free.